Hi everybody, Matt Lawton here, and this is the Astrological Winds channel. I'm going to take a look at this chart that's up on the screen instead of my face today. And this is a chart of the Libra Equinox set for Washington, D.C. So that I'm going to take a look at the next quarter of the United States and see what we can kind of expect, which can do off these equinox and solstice charts, and I've been doing for a long time. And first off, the Astrological Winds channel is a free blog that I do on YouTube. And so if you have a YouTube account, that is, and you like the blog, please become a follower and turn on your notifications so that you know when a blog is posted. It's also out there on podcasts. Just check your favorite podcast. Look up Astrological Winds channel on your favorite podcast, and that'll give you an idea of which ones have it. There's about 20 different ones that have it. It's put out through Buzzsprout. Also, I do post the link on Instagram, so if you have an Instagram account, look up Astrological Winds channel and you can become a follower there. And I sometimes post additional information during the week that's not audio or video fed. It's just comments on certain days, so get some additional info. Also put on Facebook. You have to private friend me, so that's Matthew with 2 T's, Lawton, L-A-U-T-N, and this is a free service, so I'd really appreciate it if you can pass the link on to somebody else that might be interested. And the other way you can help support me is I am a professional astrologer, so if you or someone else needs a reading, please drop me an email at matthue823@gmail.com, and I can let you know what that process entails. And of course, there's no commitment on opening up, just how that would go. So once again, I'm matthue823@gmail.com. All right. So every quarter, we have an equinox or a solstice, and for many, many years, I've been very interested in following, the history of the world's current events and how they relate to what's going on in these equinox and solstice charts. So like any country that you live in, you set the equinox or solstice chart to the capital city of that country, and that will give a good indication of what the next 3 months, what's in store for that country. So I've been doing this for the United States for many years, and so it's a little bit of an extra blog for those who are interested in that kind of thing. It's on the mundane side and definitely a little on the predictive. And I have a very set way of doing this, and just so that so when I look at this chart, the first thing we're going to notice is that Leo is the rising sign in this chart, which means that the sun down here in the third house is the ruler of the chart. And I think that really bodes well for President Biden, actually, because that's what the sun represents in a mundane chart, is the ruler or the executive part of the government. So when you see it, with the rising sign or the ascendant being the sun sign, Leo, that's usually a pretty good indicator that, the people and the nation are, really relating well to their leader, and that, they feel like, a good connection with him. And I think a lot of this, when you go think about what's going on here, the sun's down in the third house, which is what, like I said, represents the president. And the third house is, with the sun down there, it's a lot about messaging to me. So there's going to be a lot of messaging going on through Biden. And I think in particular, a lot of it may have to do with trade issues. A lot of it may have to do with infrastructure issues, communication and transportation type issues, even things to do with education, once again, and also even things to do with the press. So I think those are areas where you'll see a lot of messaging coming from Biden and his administration, where he's trying to make a connection with Americans and giving, Leo energy represents the good king, the king who has interests in his leadership position of the rest of the people that he's leading, and that the people are trusting that, he has their best interest in mind. Now the issue with this too is that, the other side of the Leo equation is for people who don't agree with him, he will be coming across as someone who's being very arrogant or self-righteous and pushing his position, and they're feeling like he's not representing their position. But I think for the most part, this actually indicates, the other thing that's really interesting about it is that Venus is in the first house too. So that's going to have some influence too. And once again, that's a feel good, that's a beneficial planet. So it's showing that people really are reacting well to what he's saying, and that, they are feeling support, that the people in general are feeling supported by the things that he's doing. So it's very interesting. I think it's going to be a good quarter for President Biden and getting his messaging out. And when you think about what's going on in reality right now in the political situation of the United States, that's actually very much a strong possibility, because Congress, which is divided, is with the Republicans having the House and the Senate ruled by the Democrats, is also divided within the House itself between the two different Republican factions. So they're hurting themselves, which gives Biden the opportunity this quarter to really get his messaging out. So I think, this is going to be a good quarter for him. It should, and people are going to react well. And there's actually some other things in the chart that show that too. And it's the very next thing. We look at the second house, and you see that Virgo is the ruler of the second house, which means Mercury is the planet ruling that house. And Mercury is in the second house in Virgo, in a very strong sign. And not only that, but it's also in a grand trine with the moon in the fifth, and Jupiter retrograde in Taurus in the 10th house. So the second house is all about security and, and the economy and things like that. And I think what this is showing is, once again, his messaging is the one that's getting through right now. He's made a connection with people. That's the moon. And he's got a lot of the entertainment industry backing him up too. This is the executive president, Biden. And also Jupiter is in his house in the 10th. What I think this is showing is the Jupiter Taurus in retrograde in the 10th is showing that inflation is going to continue to affect our economy, but that he's got some good plans that are working for most of the people, and he's getting the messaging out there. And so this quarter, once again, I think this once again is backing up a lot of what Biden's messaging is, and that he is making a good connection with the entertainment world, the pop world, the people who have a lot of control of the media kind of energy, and with people in general, and showing them that, a lot of his plans are working despite the inflation. So very interesting there. And then, like I said, we go to the third house, and I've already talked about this a little bit because the sun is in the third house. Note too that Mercury is also ruling that house, because Virgo is also on the cusp of that house. So I think once again, very strong, showing once again that the messaging that he's putting out about education, about transportation, about communications, about just the press and trade and infrastructure, like I mentioned in the beginning, is making an impact on people, and they're believing him. Now, there is an opposition to Neptune, and it's out of sign, so it shows that maybe he may be out of step a little bit with certain people. And then the other thing that's interesting too, in the third house, there's a couple interesting things. Both Mars and the South Node are in the third house also, and Mars is in Libra, which is very weak in Libra traditionally, and it's also opposite Eris and Chiron. So I think what that shows is that the courts are the main thing that's blocking. Like, Libra is the energy of diplomacy and equality and justice and courts. And Biden has one approach that he's trying to push, and this opposition to the Chiron and the Eris in the ninth house of the judicial system shows that he will continue to have issues with courts blocking a lot of the things that he stands for diplomatically and in other areas. So, and it's interesting too, because the South Node there shows he's also fighting a lot of old ideas, a lot of entrenched things that may be within his own administration or outside of it that are, part of the issue of the things that are being blocked. Now, the fourth house is empty, but it is ruled by Venus with Libra on the cusp there. And that goes back to that Venus in the first house. And I think once again, he has a lot of people, feeling better about the way things are right now than they were recently. I also think this is good for real estate. I think that maybe the real estate market is, going to start coming back well already. That its little downturn is not going to last much longer. That people are going to be fired up and aggressive about wanting to get into real estate again. The fifth house I mentioned a little bit. Note Sag is the ruler there, or on the cusp there, which makes Jupiter retrograde the ruler. But the thing that's interesting to me is that the moon is in there, which shows that people are, really connecting well with the entertainment industry, and and once again, that industry seems to be in support of the messaging of the president, because it's in that grand trine with the Jupiter retrograde and the Mercury. So people really believing in his plans and using the entertainment industry to get a lot of that stuff out there, and then once again, it's his plans, Jupiter retrograde, his plans of expansion, despite inflation kind of hindering a little bit of that. Now, the sixth house to me is very interesting in this chart. It's got Capricorn on the cusp, which means Saturn is the ruler up in the eighth house, not in good shape in Pisces and retrograde, and we've got Pluto in the sixth house too. And I think we're already seeing a lot of the effects of this one. I think that it's showing that Saturn in the eighth in Pisces is basically showing that workers, civil servants, the military, the national defense, the health system are all suffering because of things that are going on in international finance, in things that we don't really have control of. It's Pisces, so there's two parties involved. It's not something the United States can directly, change things by itself. It requires negotiating, and there seems to be a lot of deception, confusion, things like that, things going backward. And I think a good example of that is the way Saudi Arabia and Russia have a deal going on that's, keeping the amount of oil really at a restricted level. That's Saturn restriction, so that's hurting the whole economy. That's what's causing a lot of the inflation and things like that. That's what's hurting a lot of the workers in the United States. So it's also another interesting example about this, because Pluto is in there, so it shows that there's a lot of intense energy wrapped up in those things. And I think another great example of this is because the sixth house is ruled by rules the military, and once again there's a blockage going on in the military. What is that? That is one senator blocking the military and the national defense from being able to operate well because of an issue that he feels very intensely about. And therefore, the national defense and military is in this very intense position where things are not operating well. They're being blocked by one person's little vendetta. So that's another really interesting thing that's going on. And then the strikes that are going on right now too, this represents workers, the sixth house. So they're fed up. That Pluto is showing they're willing to go out on the lines and fight for change right now, for a better thing for themselves, because of all this blockage coming from banks and financing and international corporations. Very interesting there. So I think that's going to be a very potent thing to continue to watch, how military and workers react to a lot of the blockage going on right now. This next quarter, we could see more strikes, more things that, get really intense in their energy. The seventh house is empty, but it's ruled by Saturn once again. That is the house of allies and open enemies. And it shows once again, that there's issues, confusion, disagreements, miscommunications with allies that are blocking us from having effective alliances, and also a lot of big confusion and things like that, restrictions and things from open enemies, which to me is once again the war in Ukraine and how that's affecting the economy too, the international economy and financing, because of that Saturn up there in the 8th. And we go right to the 8th with, the Pisces is on the cusp, which goes back to Jupiter again, which is retrograde in Taurus. It shows the inflation will continue this next quarter, and it's rooted in what's going on in international finance. It's not so much something the U.S. can control. There's a lot of confusion. You got Neptune in this house too, a lot of deception, a lot of secret deals, hidden deals, odd stuff going on in the international finance world that is affecting the United States that we cannot directly change ourselves. So it's very, very, very tenuous kind of positioning there, and bringing a lot of confusion even back to the president with that opposition to Neptune. You go to the 9th house, I talked about this a little bit already. Once again, Jupiter retrograde in Taurus is ruling the 9th house of the judiciary and secondary education. So once again, it's showing that old values and beliefs are things that are getting people upset. Chiron, Eris, both in the 9th house, that people are not, feeling like they're being hurt by the system's rules, by the judiciary rules, that students feel like they're being hurt by things like the tuition or the loans that are going on, and that there's a lot of chaotic change being brought in by the court systems. And this has a lot to do with the ex-president, the last president too, and all the chaos that's going on in there. And yet that seems to be part of the destiny of the U.S. This next quarter, is to go through this stuff together with the North Node there. You go to the 10th house, it's strong with Jupiter and Uranus in it. It shows that once again, Biden has an opportunity to really show who he is, to really expand his base and his power, and to show his unique abilities and his ability to even act independently and take on things. So this is a really once again, it's good for him. Mars rules this house, so like he's still willing to be diplomatic, that shows. But when he does that, that's when he ends up getting hurt by the courts or by other rulings. So very interesting. I see this chart over and over showing that, Biden, this is a positive time or quarter for him, especially if he uses it properly. To go to the 11th house, that rules the legislator, and you got Gemini on the cusp, which means that Mercury in Virgo is the ruler. So it shows there are a lot of good ideas and plans in there that, and a lot of them do appeal to people. And, but they also have to go through this process of going through tradition and being slowed down by maybe even the president, in this case, blocking a lot of Congress's plans. And then the 12th house is also empty. That's got Cancer on the ascendant, which means the moon is ruling it, and the moon is in Capricorn. So that means that people are feeling like the institutions in the U.S. are not serving them well, that they're feeling restricted by them, that there's a lot of secret stuff going on within those institutions that are being hidden from the people. And so very interesting chart. I think the main points of this is that I really think it's a good quarter for Biden. And remember, that's all relative too, relative to where it's been for him prior to this. It's not perfect, but I do think he's got a great opportunity because of the confusion in Congress and the anger at the courts to get his messaging out there. And even though there's these problems with inflation that are going to continue, I think people are seeing that a lot of it is having to do with the international financing, and that he may actually have the U.S. or what the regular people's best interest in mind. And you can see the reaction to that is that a lot of these strikes and worker energy is really being focused right now, but also those continued issues with the military and continued trouble on the international finance markets. And therefore, I think we'll see a lot of inflation and Americans continuing to be upset by the way the judicial system is acting, and remember, this is for both sides of that American political spectrum too. I'm not talking to one side. In astrology, there is no choice of sides. This energy is real, and both sides are reacting to this energy in their own unique ways. So it's not, something like, an us versus them. It's no, both us and them, or you and them, or whatever you want to make divisions in, which really are just something that's created out of the human mind, is all being affected by the same energy. It's just the way that people manifest it out based on their decisions and what they believe in, powering those decisions. So a very interesting quarter coming up. I do think it's a quarter where the president can really use it to his advantage, a lot of the stuff that's going on. All right, this is Matt Lawton. This is the Astrological Winds channel. This is a video blog that I usually do every week for the weekly weather report, but this is the quarterly report for the U.S. that I do every equinox and solstice, and it is a free blog. So I really ask you right now to pass it on to someone else you think might be interested in it as a little payback. I really appreciate that. If you'd like to give a donation to the blog, my Venmo handle is the symbol @ that's A with the circle, Matthew with two T's in it and a capital M and a hyphen in the middle, and then it's Lawton, capital Lauten. Best way you can support me, though, is I am a professional astrologer. I give all kinds of professional readings. Been doing it for over 20 years, 7 years of formal education and training to do so. I would love to do your chart or someone else's chart or any other astrological service that you'd like. Best way to start that process up without any commitment is to email me at matthue823@gmail.com. One more time, that's matthue823 823@gmail.com. All right, I will see you all in the next day or two, hopefully, for the weekly report that will be for the week of September 21st through October 1st, and is featuring a full moon in Aries at about 6 degrees. So I'll see you all for that. Signing off now. This is the Astrological Winds channel, and this is Matt Lawton.